Yo, what is going on, everybody? This your boy Sean, aka Puff Comics 83, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Films, where today we discuss the 1985 Paul Verhoeven film Flesh and Blood. And I am joined by my co-host, Varangian Vigilante. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well. Had a busy week. Looking forward to this talk because I absolutely love this movie. Like you said in the pre-show before that it's not a movie you casually stumble upon when you're turning TV on. It's really a movie that you have to know that exists because it is Verhoeven said like it's a very apocalyptic film, and it plays in one of my favorite historic eras, like late medieval time, like early Renaissance era, where like warfare slowly shifted. So this is not yet a pike and shot scenario. You still have like a mostly dominated by melee weapons, like a warfare, but the movie plays in 1501, which is like the 16th century, and the movie never says where it plays. From the names of the nobles, it's probably somewhere in northern Italy. However, from the things that are happening, it could have taken part anywhere anywhere where there was like a war going on in Western and Middle Europe, because it was very similar. The armies, that was back in the day when there were not yet standing armies. So you either have to raise like levies, or you had to hire mercenaries. And of course, hiring mercenaries is expensive, but in the long run, you don't waste your own men, which you need on the field, because if you have them too long in war, then the whole starving starts, which nobody wants, because then this is like when revolutions are born. And of course, if a mercenary dies, it's like, well, what do you lose?
But there's a problem hiring mercenaries.
Exactly, especially when you don't want to pay them. That the mercenaries then, somehow you gonna get paid. And this was Verhoeven's first semi-American movie.
Yeah, 'cause there's a lot of people involved in terms of different countries. So
yeah, basically it was under the contract for Orion Pictures, which he later, of course, did RoboCop for, and but it was still at a point where he said he didn't want to move to the U.S. He wants to stay like in the Netherlands, and he thought that he could do like an American movie while still being based in Europe. And when you see this movie, and then also read that it just made $100,000 in the U.S. box office, while it cost $7 million. And you see it's a very European movie,
it sure is. You could just tell by watching this film. It's like
it's
not an American style film.
Exactly. You don't have a hero in it. You don't have any chivalry in it. This is very close to how we portray, also like through history, the warfare of this era. So it's like very apocalyptic, very dark, very brutal. While of course, especially like back in the day, when an American like made like a movie about medieval Europe, you always had like your portrayal like of Robin Hood as like the really good doer, etc. So I can totally see. First of all, it was like Verhoeven's first battle with the rating system of the US, because he also had to cut it down to get it R-rated, because it would have been totally like X-rated, especially since very little of the sex scenes in this movie is by consent. So there's a lot of raping going on, but
hey, the voice of Bart got it, man.
But it's
Wait
war.
from this film.
Yeah, it's war, and this shit happens, and he doesn't show it like in a romanticizing way. No, he shows it in a very brutal way, and when you know
Hey,
European cinema, then like that,
so
especially the French
the first
cinema.
thing you see when you see a mercenary rip a girl's clothes off, then you know you're in for a frightening experience
Yeah.
watching this film.
And the other thing is, of course, that what Verhoeven always says with his movies is that, even the fun fact is generally when you hear Verhoeven, I also watch it with the audio commentary by Verhoeven, and Verhoeven is basically every audio commentary by him actually like really sounds the same because he always also says that he's repeating himself, but like he always comes like back to the thing that he actually doesn't really like the US, and which you of course can totally see, in RoboCop, which is also a parody of the whole American capitalist system. Naturally, it's like
Perfect.
a very anti-corporate movie, RoboCop.
And it's even more prevalent now.
Yeah, exactly, and this is like what was of course the internet when you moved into the US, and it's like his video is like, well, this is shit. But of course, on the other hand, is like the whole Hollywood system gives you like an opportunity that you can make movie with a budget which you couldn't do like in Europe. So, and I think he also like he learned still a lot there. A lot of the things you see in Flesh and Blood, some motives you're also gonna see like in the future movie that he does. For example, when I think when Steven gets captured, played by Tom Burlinson, then when they are basically playing and toying with him, you can see this totally being like a proto version of what he did in RoboCop with Murphy when he was like tortured by the by the crime thing.
Steven's lucky. Steven's lucky they ain't had a bunch
Yeah.
of shotguns.
Yes. So like a lot of what you see here is what you also like see in later Verhoeven movies. And also, for example, what Verhoeven said that he didn't think was an issue, but apparently in the US it's a big issue. It's also something that I never think of, because when English is not your first language, and as a European, you really don't, especially when you're not like an Englishman, you really don't care. It's if it's like an Australian dialect, if it's a British dialect, if it's like an American dialect. It's like all the things that move over your head until you really read about it and you get confronted with it. So you have like also actors in there, from Australia and from different part of the English-speaking world. While he did it like, and he really didn't care like who's speaking. They're all speaking English, so it doesn't matter.
Oh
So,
no.
apparently for American audience, it's very irritating when you have like different English accents within the movie, which for us like is it's not even like a talking point.
Yeah, it's. I like how Verhoeven said that the reason why it failed in the American box office, it was too cynical and downbeat. Like you mentioned, the
Yes.
movie does not have a protagonist and antagonist. Everybody is shady in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Like nobody is trustworthy, and like we said earlier about when you hire mercenaries, it comes with a price. And when
Yeah.
you say, if you help me reclaim this castle, anything is yours. Mercenaries take that shit personally. They like, oh,
Exactly.
anything? I'm going in and ransack this place.
And you only have two driving motivators like in this movie, which is survival and power.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, like sex with also goes with power. So like in the beginning, I think it's a very critical thing. You basically start into the siege of his city, like the local nobility. His city was taken from him, so he hired mercenaries. Said, hey, if you take it, you're getting 24 hours of pillaging rights, which was basically a very it like it was like common way to pay mercenaries when you don't have like the initially funding capital. It's like, hey, I can't pay you right now, but I give you 24 hours to take what you want, which is not only good, but also like women, sometimes
Exactly.
men.
Like they take not only the gold, but the women and
Yeah,
whatever they feels fit to take.
and of
So
course, yeah, and of course, when you like basically hiring mercenaries to take your own city back, then you also think, hey, wait a moment, when they really pillage there, they're leaving, but I have to stay here. So I can't be like the conquering hero when I'm gonna rape my own people and like steal from them. So he screws the mercenaries
yeah,
out
and,
like of the deal. So where basically they're taking the city for him under heavy losses, and then they're like basically, well, now you can go.
and another great performance, Jack Thompson as Hawkwood,
Hmm.
the captain of the
Yeah.
mercenaries. He
Who?
was hesitant on doing because he felt bad when he took out the lady in the window who shot the gun.
Yeah, exactly.
And that
Who
was
was
a
like a nun?
pretty
Yeah.
brutal scene of how it exposed her head
Yeah, there
with
was.
the
Yeah.
injury. So he was like, we did what you wanted, in terms of Alfini, and Alfini's like, no, they can't be walking out here with all my stuff, So he was
Yeah.
conflicted, but he had to do what he was told to do because he was
Exactly.
the main captain.
It's the whole situation of the Chicago Bulls didn't want to pay the $1 million for the guy who made the impossible shot. But Hawkton didn't have the pull that, of course, Michael Jordan had, so he couldn't convince him to pay up for the mercenaries.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and this is what I love about this movie. I think the pacing is just right because you get right into the action, and then the movie like never stops going. And also what is so fantastic about it, what I really love is that you can totally see this is just one episode out of the life of a mercenary in the late medieval, early Renaissance period. So you basically see this and you see, okay, that the time before were as shit and the time afterwards will be as shit as it is. Like it doesn't get better, especially like at that time period, because a few years before when the movie at the time is set, like the Italian War started. So, and it was mainly, of course, between the Holy Roman Empire and the Kingdom of France, and Italy by right, because fuck the French, is owned by the Holy Roman Empire. And of course later, like whole Europe got thrown because when we do war, we're gonna make them big. Like we don't joke around when we're at war in Europe. And later through the marriage, of course, Spain was aligned with the Holy Roman Empire. At this time, it was still Maximilian I was the emperor, but of course later, like Charles V was not only the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, but he was also king of Spain. So French was like sandwiched in between like two big powers. That's when we kicked their fucking asses. I've already said fuck the French.
Hey, the vitriol towards France is extreme.
But yeah, it's yeah.
It's fun though, like seeing this run of history, the medieval times, Middle Ages, and all that, and it's always fascinating. And I want to talk about Verhoeven and Rutger Hauer, the main star of the film, because he did a great job portraying the character of Martin, and as somebody that not only he himself had a high standard of, but the mercenaries through the Cardinal had a high standard of because of the Saint Martin statue that they found.
So basically, after it gets screwed, like Martin's son from one of the horse.
Yeah,
exactly. Was supposed to be born, but she like well, it was a death birth, so they nobody knew it if it was his child. You know, so it could have been the child of everybody in the company,
Yeah.
uh, which was where Holfen said is like, but Martin just accepted it.
Yes.
So they buried like the child, and then they were they're finding the statue of Saint Martin in there.
Yes.
And so the cardinal among them saw this like as a sign, you know, Martin, so that he shall lead them to a better future. And
And it's like wherever the statue points with its
yeah.
sword is where they got to go.
Which of course Martin also later uses like for
Yes,
yeah.
it's hilarious. Whenever he's in a jam, he uses the statue to his own advantage.
Yeah, and you know, this is like the cynicism, of course. This is such a trademark, of course, of Verhoeven. That you know, Verhoeven sees humanity as like with a lot of cynicism, which of course you can see in Starship Troopers, in RoboCop. And with this movie also, you know, he also wants put like, on the one hand, like it's basically Verhoeven criticizes every structure of power in every movie. Like he, on the one hand, you see, of course, like his criticism of like feudal like rulership, but then of course later, you know, with Martin being like the chosen, like of the, he says, no, from now on we're gonna like, you know, nobody is above the other. We're gonna share everything, and you know, everybody's equal. With Verhoeven said, you know, basically very communist ideas, but as with communism, like in reality, is, you know, everybody's equal, but some people are more equal than the others, which of course Martin used this to make himself like a dictator for the people.
Hey, once he dressed up in the white gear, he almost made himself feel
Yes.
really special with
Exactly. That's what, like, you know, everybody dressed up as red, which of course was also like a hint at socialism from Verhoeven. And then suddenly, you know, when you change the clothes to like to white, so it's like he raised himself like upon the others. This was actually for this Verhoeven was inspired by a real historic figure, by Jan van Leyden, who I think in 1519, like a few years after this movie would have taken place in reality, like he was basically like a whoremonger, etc., who just basically came like saw the opportunity of being part like of a splitter group of the church. You know, you had all this, of course, these wars of Protestants, Catholics, etc. And he was like of the Wiedertäufer. I don't know the English name, but he basically managed to conquer like the city of Münster and proclaimed it as a new Jerusalem. Which of course only lasted as long as the local bishop like raised the Catholic army and ended that scenario. But you know, Jan van Leyden was also like, hey, we're all equal. So of course he killed everybody that fought differently. which there's also a fantastic German two-part movie about this with Christoph Waltz as the main actor who plays Jan van Leyden. Yeah, and he plays it so great. One of my favorite movies, and it's called Der König der letzten Tage, which would mean like the king of the last days. But I think the English title is A King for Burning. So if anybody has the chance to see this, I don't know if there's like an English word. There's an English title, but I've never seen like an English version out of it, because a lot of people asked me already when I was talking about it in the past on a video that, hey, they want to watch this movie, because of course Christoph Waltz as basically like a whoremonger gone tyrant.
Does it have subtitles?
I don't know. I also was looking for subtitles online, but I couldn't find some. But so sadly, I only know the German DVD that I have, but it doesn't come with subtitles. But otherwise, I would totally recommend everybody watch this movie. But that like is the inspiration that Verhoeven had actually for the character of Martin in this movie. which I didn't know, which I was reading on IMDb, was that I think that the character of the manga Berserk is actually based on Rutger Hauer.
Yes.
Martin in
No,
the
that was pretty fun to read.
Yeah, I had no idea about that.
How the creator of Berserker, which is a Japanese manga in the anime style stuff, took inspiration from this film, from the character of Martin, to create his character for Berserker.
Yeah, Berserk. Yeah, it's and which also, like, when I read it, it's like, made me happy because Rutger Hauer, who sadly passed, of course, away a few years ago, being immortalized in one of the biggest manga franchises.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. And it shows that even though this movie did not make a lot in the box office, it still had a impact.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of critics enjoyed the film, and the film does have long-term effect because people still look up to these like Saint Martin like statues or characters and worship them like we have to follow the lead.
Yeah, and the character is so good, like, because he's ambivalent. He's because he's neither evil nor good. If you don't just say every mercenary is evil, of course, but he's also doing everything for power and survival, because you have to make today good because you don't know if tomorrow is still there. This was a time, of course, you had like basically the whole Renaissance, medieval Renaissance, early modern era. It was like perpetual warfare, and a lot of people nowadays don't see that the times we in the West, and by that I mean like the US and Middle Europe and Southern Europe, that the peacetime we had since the Second World War is totally an anomaly in history. Like, we should way more cherish that we have like this inner peace. Of course, there's wars all around, but that there is no war on the in the US. There is no war like in France, in Germany, like in Italy at the moment for almost like 90 years. That is an anomaly that was not there like since I think the Pax Augusta in the Roman Empire, where under the reign of Emperor Augustus, there was like an inner peace in the Roman Empire. So for every generation before, maybe even the generations in the future, sadly, sadly that war was like the norm, that there was a war. And you totally see it, here that in the Italian wars, in that period, they lasted like for over 70 years. So everybody we see here, they never knew a day without a war. And so a lot of their actions, as cruel as they are, make sense, because you take your joy today, because tomorrow there might be no joy. And when you see some of the cruelties, for example, like you see now in the Ukraine with Russia, you see that warfare is today still as brutal to civilians, to everybody, as it was back then.
It's funny. These characters, as you said, they've always had war, so they're war ready whenever anything arises.
Yeah.
Even when there's nothing happening and they're having a good time, soon as something arises that somebody is coming, like when Stephen and his army came outside, they were ready. They got their arrows, and shooting out fire and stuff. They were ready, because they are trained to be always alert and always prepared for anything. So no matter what, we could be resting. Soon as something happens, we gotta get that sword, get our armor, and go to war.
Yeah, and this is also sometimes that, luckily today, a lot of us like can't relate to. Is that basically that, like, going to bed without fear that you just not might wake up because you got killed in your sleep, and like this peace that we can enjoy to go to bed, and just assume that nothing will happen while you close your eyes. It was not a luxury that people, especially like in the war zones back then, could have, because you had to be ready.
And this is how castles get conquered.
Mm-hmm.
Look how the mercenaries took control of the castle that was there.
Yeah,
They needed somewhere to stay, and even though St. Martin pointed them that way, it was a castle, and it's like, hey, that castle is our fortress.
Yeah,
we need to take control of that.
Yeah. Verhoeven said in the auto commentary that, of course, like, this goes like back. So, like basically, that from the nobility that gave hired the mercenaries and didn't pay them, like the son was about to get married, and his wife was then captured by the mercenaries, and they took him with them when they were like robbed their convoy. So everybody in the group, like, hey, we just got ourselves like a young woman. Well, everybody take their turns. And Martin went first. And the girl played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, perfectly, she played it so well. She basically switched the power dynamic for survival, and she gave like Martin the illusion that she wanted him, which a lot of people criticized, but they don't understand that she did not enjoy it. She did that to survive, and Martin was so impressed by this, so that he didn't want to share her anymore with the other.
He was infatuated with her from that point forward.
Exactly.
Summer wanted her just for himself and the rape, and every time she was around, he was right next to her. But Martin was like, no, that's mine.
And of course, he couldn't say, and here we come back like to the law understanding also of medieval times, especially, Martin was just proclaimed as the one who brings equality to everybody in the group. So he can't say now, hey, she's mine, she just belongs to me, because then people would say, hey, didn't you say we share everything now? So he had to create like obstacles for the others so they can't take their turn, which of course in that scenario afterwards war, he set like a tent on fire.
He uses subtle ways to say she belongs to me without actually saying it.
And then when the other guy tried to get on her like in the cart, and he looked back, and then he was like turning the statue of Saint Martin like with the sword to the castle. So this is it, we go there. So he could like interrupt it again. So it was basically they just conquered the castle because he didn't want that his wife now basically like gets raped by his man.
And him using the St. Martin statue to his advantage could also be a disadvantage if they led them to somewhere that did not satisfy. It could have been a disadvantage for a certain time. If he would have truly abused it, it would have led to their downfall.
So basically, he was like also not like he was the leader, but he also was like a slave to circumstances with the statue, which I think it's such a fantastic way to portray this, and which also makes the character of Martin even more interesting, and which is a pity that Rutger Hauer really hated it.
But see, here's the thing. I don't blame Rutger for hating it, because he's been playing villains for majority of his time prior. So when he sees something like this, he's like, it's a chance to be a heroic thing. Especially considering the fact that he loved the Conan movie. He was like, I could be, the heroic, like not Conan in muscle wise, but the heroic
Conan heroic.
Yeah. Like I could be a heroic character and bring forth that, I could do something different than just playing somebody who's morally ambiguous and like doesn't have these set of rules. He wants to play this heroic character, and that's where him and Verhoeven clash, because Verhoeven wanted to portray the Middle Ages as a stinking mess that
Yeah.
everybody is crooks. You know,
Yeah.
even the good people can be swayed into doing things like Martin and the whole thing with Ames. That was something that was like completely out of his control, but he kind of fell into that. So
Yeah.
I can see Howard's point of view, whereas he wanted to be a hero. And like we said, we talked about the score. How the score kind of makes the film feel like it has a heroic edge, but it doesn't
Yeah.
have no heroes.
Yeah,
So I
because
guarantee you, he felt like he wanted to be a hero.
exactly, yeah, because Paul Verhoeven liked Conan the Barbarian, which naturally everybody loves. Conan the Barbarian is the best movie ever made. And he was like so impressed by the score of Basil Porturi, so he wanted Basil Porturi to do the film. And the funny thing is, the soundtrack is amazing. I have to track the soundtrack down. It's fantastic, and but it's like very heroic, which goes totally against the mood of the movie. But I think in a good way, because I think that it's like how the characters perceive themselves, as being more heroic than they actually are. So it's a nice contrast. So I think this works perfectly well. And like I said, I can totally understand Howard, because he signed on to this project before he was in Blade Runner. Um, so basically, once this movie started, like Verhoeven and Howard, I think they did 5 projects in the Netherlands before both went to the US. Um, and then Howard, he didn't like the character because he was afraid he's getting typecast into this villain, and this movie would damage him to get other roles in the US, which is understandably, because let's face it, Hollywood is very big on typecasting.
Yeah, and
especially when you're foreigner.
And another thing is the love interest with Ames wasn't in the original script. The movie was about Hawkwood and Martin, and I think because of what happened at the beginning, we would have focused more on their separation as being mercenaries and how Hawkwood like kind of betrayed the mercenaries with what the man promised them. So once they introduced the romantic part, maybe Howard's characters just kind of
we're gonna be using the term romantic very loosely.
Very loosely, but that's what Orion wanted. They wanted a romantic interest, and I hate when certain studios try and put something into a film that is not originally there, but because we need a romantic interest. And I love that Verhoeven gave him a romantic interest in a completely different way, to the point you're like, damn, well, we gotta change how this is. I'm like, nope, you're not changing.
Only the way that Verhoeven knows. I think he also said that that the character of Jennifer Jason knew that she was, I think, also like an early inspiration, how she how she switched from being manipulative to like being sensible for her own survival, etc. Like how he used also similar stuff, of course, in Basic Instinct. And also, of course, how also Sharon Stone portrayed like in Total Recall. When she switched from "I want to kill you" to "I'm your wife." Consider this a divorce. So like, and once again, also in the auto commentary, Verhoeven said like, I'm copying myself a lot.
Hey, once you have certain traits, you're gonna reuse them, man.
Yeah.
But I thought that whole thing with Howard and Verhoeven over the character of Martin was interesting, and how Howard really wanted to change his perspective of being typecast as a villain to being more, and we do see him take more heroic roles after this film.
Yeah.
Blind Justice. But it's great to see that little tidbit, and read about it, because it's interesting how Howard feels about the film and how Verhoeven feels about the film.
Wasn't Rutger Hauer on Lady Hawk?
Yeah. Lady Hawk with Michelle.
Yes. Right. So he got his heroic fantasy character, like, which was a fantastic movie. But yeah, totally, you're totally right with this. And the sad thing is that Hauer and Verhoeven clashed so much in this movie that they never worked again.
And
And because
I truly think that the ending was something that they had to agree on, because I truly think that Martin was supposed to die, but I think they
yeah,
kind of like
could be,
rewritten
could be.
it to make sure he survived, because
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like Martin's character, as corrupt as he is, he still has qualities that make him seem heroic. Even
Yeah,
if he's a mercenary, he just comes off as charming.
it's of course Rutger Hauer.
It's Rutger Hauer, but Rutger Hauer could play menacing.
Yeah, I know.
As when we get to the Hitcher next week, like yeah.
But there's nothing charming about it.
But he could be a charming guy as well. So that's the thing with this film. It's like it portrays Martin as ambiguous. Like yeah, he has this charm about him, but at the same time, he's quick to take advantage of other people and turn it for his advantage.
Yeah.
But I can see why he wanted to portray more of a heroic character.
Exactly, but it's like I also said, that watching this movie is, especially when you have like a historic interest, I don't think you like really mad at anybody, because
No.
it's just like I said, it's like you're just basically living day by day, because there's so much shit going on that can change everything. What I also really loved is how they showed basically the how warfare technology like was improved by thinkers like in the Renaissance era. Like with Stephen, like who originally was supposed to marry Jennifer Chaston's character, that he was like a very Renaissance mind who had like ideas. One of them that backfired because he showed it like in the first siege, like to Martin. But when he also built like this it's basically like early tank to which is interesting, because of course like Leonardo da Vinci, like he did a lot of already war machinery implanted, and Da Vinci lived in this time period. Like Da Vinci died 1519, so basically at the point in the movie Da Vinci was still alive. It was in Italy naturally, so just such an interesting time.
I like the character of Stephen because he was opposed to marriage or opposed to being into it, because his father's like, yeah, we chose the girl and she's gonna be your wife, and it's like, what? Because he was very into his books. He was very into the knowledge of like you talking about Renaissance and creating things and stuff. So he was looking towards the future of how to change the war. And considering the fact that he built a fucking tank overnight, him and the guys built a tank overnight. They went straight to work. It's crazy, but at the same time, it's revolutionary.
What I also really love, they would have said, that in the beginning he has like this disagreements with his father, while later, when his wife to be was then captured because he was just met her, he fell in love with her because she very well manipulated him, because she is very good at that, and she was like in her own best interest, which was like probably one of the most disgusting romantic scenes in history.
Around a bunch of corpses.
Yeah, but it also was, that she was read like in, like probably like in alchemy and in like mysticism, etc. Because there is like this tale that under hanged people, that when people are hanged, so they're having like a final orgasm, so they ejaculate like on the floor, and from this seed springs a mandrake, or around how we call it. This is like a plant where the roots look like a human being. So, and this has like this, apparently this magical power. So, that she dug like under the hanged people who, like two corpses already, were very rotten. So then she found the mandrake and they ate both from it, like to like make like the bonding. And she totally used that, like, she totally makes Steven fall for her as much as she totally make Martin fall for her.
And that's the manipulation
Mm.
that the character of Ames uses. Like he was not interested,
Yeah.
but then he got interested, and
Yeah.
once these formed that bond with her, and she got captured, he was in gung ho material.
Yeah, like, I don't want to play with
need-
my books anymore.
Yeah, fuck the books. I
I
want
want
my
the
soon to be wife.
Yeah. And it's and this movie, it's so crazy. When later, when he got captured by the mercenaries and he got cucked, to watch like Martin fucking her. It is Verhoeven really, he really did it with this movie.
Talk about how the fuck this guy escaped the chain.
Verhoeven even said that this is like the only silly part of the film, that he basically like put the chain around the tree and made it like because there was a thunderstorm. So
I laughed
Yeah.
loud.
yeah, I think the Verhoeven said is like, yeah, this is like
It's a little too silly for me because
yeah,
the
like,
first
it's an
thing I
ultra-
thought of was Caddyshack when the golfer got struck by lightning.
Yeah. There was like an ultra like MacGuffin.
And then he gets up immediately. I'm like, what? You just got struck by lightning, bro.
Yeah, like I think
Oh my
like
God.
like for that part they could have like done something different, but otherwise also that the whole thing is that when he did like the research with his screenwriter, because he and his screenwriter already worked also like in the past like on a project with Rutger Hauer for the Dutch television, where they had like in the same time period the series, but it was aimed for children. And when they did the research, like they found so much stuff they couldn't use for the children's show. So Verhoeven then is like, hey, when we do this, it's like, hey, because there was biological warfare in the medieval ages when you had like plague corpses and you're throwing them, catapulting them.
I
And,
thought
like-
I thought the plague added another dimension to
Yeah.
the story. Like
That's just-
like we said, like those times sicknesses and plagues were very, very common.
Yeah.
Especially when in cities where they had the rats that carry plagues.
Yeah.
So having the plague as something that's a background threat, and then that came
Yeah.
full force towards the end, it's like, yeah, that
Yeah.
dog meat.
Let's
That's
just say I watch a lot of movies. Some gorier than others. However, I was very happy that I already seen this movie, because I was smart enough today to first eat before watching the movie. Because this is I recommend this movie to everybody. Don't order a pizza while you watch it. It's not that kind of movie that you want to have like a nice beverage and food.
Man, when the plague came involved, when the plague got involved, and they started tossing the dog meat over the castle, woo! I was like, it's over.
And Stephen threw it into the well, so
Yeah,
that
because-
because then everybody of his captures gets like the plague.
It's crazy, yo. And I was wondering, like, that water was still plague ridden when Martin fell into it. So
Yeah, it's a be the plot armor, but
I know it felt
but you also don't. Even basically, you don't know if everybody that survived at the end of the movie would still survive the next days.
yeah.
Yeah, so which of course goes also with the theme of the movie. You may survive one day, but who knows the next. But also, but sometimes, as we've seen with Hawkthorne, like you can survive the plague. It's just very unlikely.
It's another thing is I like how their doctor was like, I'm not using no aerobatic foreign ways to I'm gonna drain the blood and that's it. And Hawkwood later on was like, fuck, I gotta do it the way that is written in those books.
Isn't it so interesting that back then, like the Islamic world was more progressive than yeah. But that was also the thing that, especially like in like Christian Europe, that you know the Greek writers, Aristotle, like from the antique times, that they are basically were since they were heathens, like nobody except for some universities, but you know what stays at universities doesn't reach the doesn't reach the general populace. So like the teaching of the pagan philosophers of ancient Greek and of the Roman Empire was not taught, like etc. While the Islamic world back in the days, and especially since like a lot of parts were conquered from the former Roman Empire, which we call today like the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire. So they came into contact, of course, with a lot of the antique knowledge of medicine, and they basically then back in the day, like they didn't have any quarrels to use like the technology. So this is also why the Islamic world in the medieval and the Renaissance era had a better understanding of medicine than Christian Europe.
And on top of that, like you had other parts of the world that use like certain plants and herbivores for their medicine.
Yeah,
So the fact that they were still like behind the times on what more can they be done to help their own people, the world around them, they had better uses.
yeah, you know, because also like in Europe you still had like the method of bloodletting, which you know think, oh, it's like the blood is poisoned, you cut them open and get the bad blood out, which only made the person weaker because they lost blood, so they were more likely to die. But you know, it's one of the doctors, you know, you never had a patient that complained because they either were healed or dead.
But yeah, I enjoyed them adding the plague to it because it really adds a sense of dread when
Exactly.
and you like you can't go around like yeah you could be a mercenary or stuff and do like when they stormed the castle to take to take it, the little girl there was sick with the plague,
Yeah,
and her handler to escape the situation jumped off the side of the castle,
yeah,
died, but the girl survived, and she was able to move on until she was found by Hawkwood and his men, and that's
yeah,
when he got contacted to play because he touched
yeah.
the wound on the back. So
It's
it's devastating, and
yeah, it's like
it's something that's necessary in films like these that focus on that time because it was a big part of it.
yeah, I think the only thing that Verhoeven let out, because otherwise, this movie is really warfare with every negative things that could happen in that time period in a nutshell. I think the only thing he let out is like STDs, because those additionally came into like the mix back in the day naturally.
And them motherfuckers didn't give a damn. They were doing everything, whatever.
I mean, when you look like how a lot of monarchs like even like died of syphilis. You know why?
But you know, also I want to give shout out to the great late Brian James.
Yeah, he was one of the mercenaries.
Yeah, but he got a lot of screen time, and he is the villain personified. Like that dude, even in 48 Hours, he starts out as a good guy, but then when he become a villain, like you found your calling. That dude is just great at playing villain.
And the whole movie's like he's just simping for Susan Tyrrell.
Yeah,
which had a crush, of course, on Martin. So basically, he never scores. Just in the final moments before she dies of the plague, like she accepts him to be there.
and I thought he went out like a boss, like battling.
Yeah.
Dude had 3 pointed sticks in his body, and he's still defiant and talking. So I was like, he went out like a boss, man. Whereas Summer went out at the hands of Steven in a brutal way.
Yeah.
And he's another one. He's a mercenary that he had it coming for how he was so damn ruthless towards Ames and wanting to get his way with her.
That's the fun thing that basically, like in a bunch of in a bunch of crew people that you stick out, like that's an achievement. Like when you make other mercenaries that rape and plunder almost look like ambivalent.
Like I said, I was just giving praise to Brian James. Like he was ruthless in this film.
Yeah,
but yet Dennis Johnson was like, I'm gonna be even more ruthless.
He's a bad example for bad example. And of course, you also I think that Ronald Lacey, who played the Cardinal,
yes,
yeah, he did it fantastic. Also, like his death was so poetic that the statue of Saint Martin with the sword fell on him. He got.
Hey, you live by the sword of Saint Martin. You die by the sword of Saint Martin.
Yeah. Also, of course, like the whole cinematography was beautiful. Verhoeven knows what it does. And especially, like, this is all when the tents were burning, so the statue of Saint Martin, with the flames in the back, and they had like this halo. And later, when when Martin, used like the black powder to blow up like the siege tower tank that Stephen built, that with the flames in the background, and that the Cardinal looked at him and saw that. He had like this wheel and like the fire was behind it, like such a stunning thing.
It's funny that they brought that back because at the beginning of the film, the barrel used to light the fire. They lit it early and it caught up to the guy. He got blown up.
Yeah, and everybody just laughing because also that shows how cheap a life was back then.
Yeah, and how risky it was. Like you don't know, you light that fuse, and it caught up to him so fast, he didn't even get to the spot where he had to drop it off. So he got blown up. So they reused it. This time Martin uses the barrel and it achieves success.
Yeah, and it was like fantastically done. Like I really love this movie. I think I wouldn't say it's underrated because everybody that watches the movie actually really loves it. I think it's underrepresented, but I also not totally know why, because
it's not for the weak.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not for the weak. Like you got to have a strong sense of what this movie represented and the time period it is to really like enjoy it. Like if you go into this film watching it with the way you think today and saying, "Oh, this is disgusting" and stuff like that, you're not going to enjoy it. The first 20 minutes is going to turn you off.
Yeah. What I also really love about is like the portrayal, like, the costumes, that they really went to historic sources to be inspired by the costume design. And, when the nun in the beginning, she gets hurt and she was like in the bed and Hawkton that tried to help her, that, that she had armpit hair because, of course, women didn't shave like the armpits back then, so it's just so that this movie has.
You expect all the women to have the natural hair and all body parts.
Yeah. So this movie had such a love for portraying. I would never go so far to say as Verhoeven did, because Verhoeven said he wanted to show it as it really was. It's impossible because we can only work with the sources we have and we interpret them. So we can never truly replicate a time from the past in the now. But I think that he did it as well as somebody with a commercial interest could do it. And the fun fact is, I think that this movie and like Monty Python, Quest for the Holy Grail and Jabberwocky, which of course are very silly comedies, but since of course two members of Monty Python are actually were, since sadly one passed already away, for the historians, but they had like two historians, so they portrayed like the medieval times, despite like all of the parody, etc., very accurate, especially like in Jabberwocky, which is a fantastic movie.
I always felt that Monty Python Holy Grail it's one of those films that you truly have to watch a few times to get the
Yeah,
comedy.
that's
Because I remember the first time I've heard about people talking about how great that is. The first time I watched it, I admit that some of the jokes didn't land with me. And then I watched it the second time, and then I got the gist of the joke, because it's British humor at its finest.
it is, and I personally I love Monty Python. Luckily, my mom is a huge Monty Python fan, so from a very early age, she showed me like all the Monty Python films, and of course, it also then it was very beautiful to watch him as a kid and laugh about it. And later on, when you rewatch him as an adult, it's like then you really get some of the jokes.
Yeah, like it takes a few watches for you to get the gist of the jokes they're playing. Because, like I
Yes.
said, not a lot of it will connect with people. And I know some people reacted to the film and say, they didn't see anything special. I'm like, it's because you can't just watch it one time and think, it's nothing special. You have to give it at least another viewing, and then the jokes will connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, back to Flesh and Blood. It's just like I recommend it. I fully recommend this movie. It's it's like it's such a unique movie because it's so funny where Hogan was thinking back then that he actually did a movie for the American market, but it's like this is basically really a movie that if you it almost seemed that Verhoeven tried to make a movie that it doesn't resonate with the mainstream at all costs.
Well, the first half hour just doesn't connect with the mainstream. Like, this movie is not for the weak, like I said.
Yeah. But if you're interested in the historic era, if you just love movies with swords, with fire, with a lot of blood,
medieval fantasy are fun. They can be really good films.
It is great, and like I said, the only thing that is really sad that Hauer and Verhoeven really clashed. I mean, Verhoeven said
especially
that,
considering, just because they're both from the Netherlands, they're both Dutch, does not mean that they align perfectly. Like, they clashed and they never worked together again. And like you said, it's a shame because both men brought a lot to the table when it comes to the movie industry. And Rutger Hauer is just one of those. Is one of those actors that he just, every movie he's in, no matter how great it is or how bad it is, he always elevates it to watchable because he makes the movie his own.
Yeah, not to take anything away from Peter Weller, who portrayed Murphy's RoboCop so fantastic. I would love to be in a timeline where Rutger Hauer played Murphy.
That would have been great.
That would have been really fantastic.
That would have been great. But I enjoyed this film, man. And I'm glad you recommended it because, again, this movie rarely gets played or talked about here in America. So, and of course, I'm a fan of Rutger Hauer, and I've seen a lot of his films. This one that I didn't really watch as much, but I'm glad I watched it fully and this is another great Rutger Hauer film.
Absolutely, and I think that it's Verhoeven, one of the best directors in history, and you can this is like an early Verhoeven. This is the first international project he was working on, and also from a cinema historic perspective, this makes this movie, I think, a must-watch for everybody that is interested in the big directors of one of the biggest eras in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I still think that Showgirls is a fantastic movie, unironically.
But this is the second Rutger Hauer film. Now we about to get dark and
No, we're gonna get even dark.
I'm talking like this film, he's like in between good and bad. Next film, he is straight up diabolical.
Yeah, I think. Let me think. But
Ain't nothing to
now,
think, man. He's diabolical. He's evil.
I was just thinking, I think I couldn't name a more cruel and repulsive character in cinema history than Rutger Hauer in The Hitcher.
Oh, we about to get repulsive next week.
Yeah, like I'm really thinking.
I'm already dreading watching the film, to be honest.
Like, most of the horror characters, they're just too fantastic. But otherwise, yeah, probably you're gonna have like some diddlers that are as bad as he's. But I think in terms of being like just a plain murderer, I think there's no more repulsive character than Rutger Hauer in The Hitcher. Yeah.
So that is next week's discussion, The Hitcher, to conclude our Rutger Hauer 3 weeks.
And you know what's already on the way here?
What's that?
The 5 Heartbeats.
Man.
On DVD. I got it from Amazon in the US since I was also like ordering the WWE, like the Gunther Ultimate figure. So I added that one to it. So they're saving shipping.
That's going to be a fun movie to talk about. And I can't wait to see your reaction to Big Red and his 9 to 5 workouts.
I'm really looking forward to it because, like I said, I've never known of the existence of this movie, and for your birthday, it's gonna be really nice. You want to see something really tiny?
What's...
My comic book stack for the last month.
Hey, I'm not gonna front. Last Saturday I picked up my pull and I stopped with my pull. I'm not getting no more new comics. I'll still support my shop because my shop is awesome.
Not even Conan?
I'm gonna get that in trades. I'm gonna pick that up in trades. You know, I'm not gonna quit reading it, but I'll pick it up in trades going forward.
Yeah, I remember my big stacks in the past.
Yeah, it's just that comics is just getting too expensive, and it's getting to the point where I'm like, man, I'm looking at how many boxes I want to start putting up to sell. I just need to cut some space.
I mean, as you can see, I have space in the since my ex-girlfriend just moved out, and suddenly.
So what's the small stack?
Naturally, Conan.
They need Red Sonja so bad there, man.
Variant cover.
I'm so sick of Red Sonja at Dynamite now. Titan needs to get Red Sonja.
As you know, I'm officially outlawed by the official Red Sonja account.
Yeah, and whatever with her.
Then Godzilla, Sons of Giants. Like Here Be Dragons 2, which is also fantastic. I also really liked it because it also plays in the Renaissance time era, and especially with the Spanish conquistadors. So that's very interesting. Then German comic, also the fantastic Sword and Sorcery title, Luba Wolfschwanz, and gotta laugh with some Luba. Then of course Severed Sword of Conan.
Yeah, I guess that.
And Shudder. 1 month comics, which I only paid around 50 euros. Yeah. Not those big stacks as in the past, but it's really sad. Like you said, there's no more Red Sonja on my pull list because what Dynamite does is just abrasive. It's bad writing. It doesn't, it feels like fucking Springtime for Hitler. It almost feels like they're trying to make a flop.
And they come up with so many of these miniseries that don't hit at all. The first issue is like, nah, I dropped it. It's like,
like the last one.
When I'm reading early Dynamite Red Sonja more than modern Red Sonja, it's like, y'all did something great early on, and then y'all just
Yeah,
fell off a cliff.
and I don't even know why, because it's really almost if they were actively trying to tank the IP. I mean, I know that as from conversation that the the right owners of Red Sonja don't even really know what they have. Like it's basically they're trying just to make it a popular fantasy franchise, and they have like no love for the Hyperborean Age. They have no love for sword and sorcery, and they really try to push Red Sonja into every fantasy format to make it stick. Also like the last run where basically it's like this is like a this looks like a bad fan fiction of The Witcher. Like I love The Witcher. I love The Witcher novels. I love the games. I haven't watched one single Netflix episode because that looked like shite. But nah, it's yeah,
It sucks.
it's
And like I said, with comic books, there are some great comics. I wish I didn't cut my pull, but between everything going on, I will be going to Tampa Bay Comic Con because, like I said, the main selling point is DMC. Like I was a big Run DMC fan growing up as a kid, so I got to meet DMC.
So you gotta walk. So you gotta walk this way.
I gotta walk this way. I gotta walk this way and proclaim myself the king of rock.
Yeah. But yeah, I can totally understand it. It's just at a point where, I mean, how much do they? Are they avoiding to put the price tag? Oh, here it's hidden. Like $5
For a floppy.
for floppy. $5. Like, how many floppies are in a paperback?
Oh boy.
5 or 6 usually. I remember when fucking paperbacks, and that was not that long ago, was like $12 or something.
And on top of that, you gotta, shout out to my boy Matt Oldham. We gotta go and say, why buy these books now when they'll be in the cheap bins later on?
With some, I even bought it because the print run is so low.
Those I understand, but
yeah,
like the bigger books, they'll be in the cheap bins.
Yeah, exactly. And
you don't know how many books I've seen early that came out early in the year at Heroes Con in the dollar bin.
Yeah, which of course works in the US. In Europe, of course, not so much, because you really have to, because they're just ordering for you. So when you don't order it, the chances are very slim to get it, and when you have to order it online, and then you have to pay more shipping than the issues were. But for the US, I totally get, like, I would just like, well, let's go through the dollar bins in a few months.
Yeah, you'll see them.
And there's so many silly things. It's also like, oh, it's a low print, and yeah, because nobody's reading it.
And then sometimes you deliberately make it a low print because you know nobody's gonna buy it. Yeah. And that's why Savage Dragon is such a hard find in past 100 because he made it low print just for the people who read it.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to low print it if you're not having a whole bunch of people buying your book. Yeah, just for the subscribers.
Exactly. It's and which of course makes sense for small properties, but when suddenly like big characters in a low print run because nobody's reading it anymore, it's gonna be interesting. We're living, of course, like in a time of change, where especially like the youth has so many different forms of media consumption when they grew up, and most of them, first of all, can't afford comics. It's not like, because remember back in the day, people say, yeah, but comics are also like, now back in the day when and this was in Austria, when I went with my mom shopping for groceries, at the checkout, like they had the magazines, and I was buying like Turtle comics. I was buying El Bundy comics, which were awesome. I really loved the El Bundy comic. Um, and I was buying like other comics. So and it was like normal. Like this was the form. Like yeah, it's like my mom said, yeah, put it there. My mom was just happy that I was reading.
You go to the newsstand, you had your comic books, you had your video game magazines, you had all types of stuff. The wrestling magazines, man.
I was always buying the WF magazine, yeah.
Yeah, so there was a lot. And they were affordable then compared to if you look at the magazines now, like what, $15 for a magazine?
And we all bought the WWF ice cream with the tattoos, and we had all the rub-on tattoos of the wrestlers.
CM Punk still want the ice cream bars back.
Yeah. Yeah, but nowadays, when you with the whole inflation, you can take your like kid to the store. It's like I'm gonna buy this like $5. Like this is like, and it is like this little paper like.
It's cheaply made.
Yeah, cheaply made. Half of it advertisement, and you have read it in 1 minute because there's barely any dialogue in it. So it's, and for $5 you can still get some. You get on a Steam sale a game that gives you 100 hours of joy for the money.
If a comic book barely has dialogue in it, I might as well go read a manga. Because at least you get more pages and more out of it than you get in a single comic book with no dialogue.
I can buy a fucking hentai manga, and reading it and jerking off takes longer than a whole fucking paperback of any like Marvel comic.
With that, we will close the show. It's been great. Hey, we ain't really had nobody in the comments, but that's fine.
Who cares? It's just us and it's fun.
Yeah, so thanks to whoever 1 or 2 viewers watched us. We will be back next week talking The Hitcher, and I will hope that you all have a great weekend. We will see you then. Later, y'all.